Well, I'm joined now by Carns, who resigned as Armed Forces Minister last week, just hours after speaking to Kathy Newman on Sky News. Carns, thank you so much for joining us. Lots to talk to you about, but let's start with that comment that we just heard from Lisa Nandy about how other departments are being asked to look for possible savings to help fund defence. What do you make of that comment, and had you heard it last week, might it have changed your mind about resigning?
Well, I've been going on about this for 2 years. We keep taking defence as a completely separate issue. Defence is much broader than, in fact, it should be regarded as a national resilience. So how do we think about health security? How do we think about job security? How do we think about economic security? It should be the central cohering principle of government, not something on a separated silo that you have to raid other government departments to support. It should be the central cohering strategy as we move forward in such a dangerous world, as we've seen on the news with the Middle East, Ukraine, and even in the English Channel just yesterday.
But so in light of that, because the system is as it is right now, what do you make of the fact that other departments are apparently, according to Lisa Nandy, being asked to make savings? I mean, the system may not be as you wanted it to be, but do you think that the Prime Minister might have slightly changed his mind?
Yeah, so I think if my resignation and John's resignation results in a change of direction, which creates more funding for defence, that's great news. But what I would say is we must ensure it's spent on the right thing and we get really good value for tax-paying money. And the Defence Investment Plan needs to change to make sure that it's not buying kit and equipment for the last war, but for the next war. But I'd also like to see that resource go into building our national resilience, everything from cadets all the way through to defence industry, and really doing what we started under John Healey, was making that engine for growth across the country.
I get your point. Forgive me for just pushing one final time. So in light of all of that, when you hear Lisa Nandy say something like that, do you feel relieved that perhaps the Prime Minister is going the direction that you'd like him to, or do you think it's just not enough?
Well, I think it's great news. I mean, if government departments are having a look back into their own departments to see where a resource can be reprioritised, I think that's good news. What I will say again, though, is that it must be spent on the right things, in particular national resilience, which is about how this country can prepare itself for an upcoming crisis in the next 3 to 5 years, much the same as every country is doing across Europe, from Germany to Estonia to Sweden, Finland and Norway.
Let me ask you about another story in the news today. That's UK forces have seized a Shadow Fleet oil tanker in the English Channel for the first time. Apparently, you've been pushing for that for a few months. So your reaction to it happening and to it happening now?
Well, I punched air. I'm delighted. I'm really, really happy that took place. But again, it goes back to just thinking, if we step back and look at this, our foreign policy affects our gas prices. Our industrial strategy affects your kids' outcomes. This is much broader than just defence. The front line many, many years ago was thousands of miles away in Afghanistan. It's now here in the English Channel. That's a completely different mindset now to how we think about defence, because we're not packaging our armed forces to deploy overseas to fight. We're fighting from here at home, as you can see on the pictures on your screen, that oil tanker which has been stopped by the Royal Marines and the Navy.
But those dynamics and the change in threats, that's been the case for quite a while, whereas we're seeing the seizing of the oil tanker today. Do you think that your resignation and John Healey's last week played any part, obviously not the main part, but played any part in the decision-making of the Prime Minister?
Well, remember, we've already supported the French, we've supported the Americans aboarding these tankers. It's got to fit a certain criteria for us to be able to board it. This one obviously fitted that criteria, and we've acted decisively, seized that ship, and that will save, just by the money reduced going back into Russia, will save thousands of lives in Ukraine. So I think it's a fantastic thing. I'm really glad it's happened. I'm glad we moved faster than we have been in the past, and we've got on with it and we've done it. We're now in line with all of our, for example, Joint Expeditionary Force partners who have already done this type of activity.
So obviously a lot of reasons why the Prime Minister would have decided to make the move when he did. But again, do you think your resignation and John Healey's last week, which put defence spending at the centre of the news agenda for several days, do you think that played any part at all?
I'm not sure if it did, because I'm no longer in government. But if it did, I think it's great news. Within the last 24, 40 hours. We've had good musings from the new Defence Secretary. I have a huge amount of respect for, by the way, Dan Jarvis, ex-parachute regiment. And then also we've just seen the seizing of a tanker for the first time, which we've been talking about for a long time. So, I would say if it has anything to do with mine and John's resignation, that's a good thing. It shouldn't have to cause a resignation to make this happen. But nevertheless, I think the PM has acted decisively on this matter, and I think it's a very good thing. Sends a great signal to our allies. President Zelensky's already said, congratulated us, and I want to see much more of it taking place as we go forward.
You've just said that it had been discussed for a long time, that the seizing of oil tankers that are part of the Shadow Fleet. Why do you think it didn't happen before?
Well, they're really difficult parameters, and the other piece is that Russia changed its tactics. So it put a frigate in the channel to escort these ships, and a lot of these ships were diverted, taking long routes around the UK, a long way away from our wonderful island. And so a lot of that made boardings a lot difficult, a lot more difficult, and tactically challenging. But we've got ahead of it. We've got it done. I would just like to say, as we step back, just think Middle East crisis ongoing that affects our economic policy, affects our energy security. Ukraine, which has affected our food inflation prices, and effects across the world, given some of the grain issues and broader economic impacts. We have, now we have Shadow Fleet vessels. We have 15 billion worth of cyber attacks. We have an influence battle going on with social media and foreign actors trying to win over the hearts and minds of the country and sow division. There's a lot of issues going on at the moment, and we need to take defence and security seriously, but we've got to think of it differently. It's about national resilience, not just defence.
Precisely because there's so many issues going on, it must be a strange time to step away from the position that you had as Minister for the Armed Forces. Now, you were last on Sky on Thursday. You were speaking to my colleague, Cathy Newman. You were still a Minister of Government then, and then after coming off air, I think it was about half an hour, you resigned. I'm just wondering how Number 10 took your interview on Sky, or just some of the things that you were saying.
Well, it was a bit of a message, really. There were three things I needed to change if I was going to stay in government. One, we needed a better resource settlement on the Defence Investment Plan. The second, that the Defence Investment Plan needed to be fit to fight the next war. Drone revolution, data, AI, all of those elements needed to be at the very central heart of our Defence Investment Plan. I didn't believe they were. And the third one is if I've lost trust in the Northern Ireland Legacy Act, how am I expected to get all of the veterans to trust the government to put it through? Those three issues, if I didn't get change on those three issues, then I wasn't going to continue in a government.
Al Carns, former Armed Forces Minister. Sir, thank you so much for sharing your views.
Have a great Sunday. Thank you very much.